everyone, my name is Angie and today I'm going to be talking about my favorite part of the brain, which is the parietal lobe. So in this picture here you can see that the parietal lobe is located behind the frontal lobe and then above the temporal lobe, and then the occipital lobe is behind the parietal lobe as well. And then the parietal lobe actually has two hemispheres. You've got a right hemisphere and a left hemisphere, and they're divided by the longitudinal fissure. And then you've got the central fissure that divides the frontal and the parietal lobes. You've got the lateral fissure that divides the parietal lobe from the temporal lobe. And then you've got the parieto-occipito fissure that divides the parietal lobe from the occipital lobe. And then some of the functions of the parietal lobe is the orientation of our bodies in space, which is proprioception. It's also the main receiving area for the sense of touch and is involved in processing sensory information. It's involved in the perception of location and the movement of our body parts. It's involved in understanding spatial orientation and our body awareness. And it's also involved in processing language and visuospatial navigation reasoning. Some examples of those are being able to read a map, follow directions, or not trip over an object. So we've got the postcentral gyrus, which is the location of the primary somatosensory cortex, which is right here, which is influenced by the auditory cortex, the visual cortex, and the motor cortex. And that area is responsible for receiving input regarding touch, pain, and temperature. And it also contains the sensory homunculus. And then you've got the posterior parietal cortex right here, which is responsible for coordinating movements, spatial reasoning, attention, and is also part of the dorsal where-how pathway, which is our body being able to locate an object and then be able to come up with the formulation of how we're going to act on that object. And this is just a visual representation of the sensory homunculus, where it shows like the areas of the eyes, nose, face, and lips, and then the hand get a lot more sensory innervation, so they're more sensitive than, let's say, the hip or the trunk back here. And here we've got the superior parietal lobule and the inferior parietal lobule, and each of those areas are responsible for things like the orientation in space and of other objects. And then you've got mathematical operations, visuospatial cognition, and language processing in the inferior parietal lobule, but language processing is involved in most areas of the parietal lobes. And then there is a difference between the right and the left parietal lobes. The right parietal lobe is mostly responsible for interpreting spatial information, while the left is responsible for like language, understanding mathematical calculations, and then the manipulation of objects. And then some areas of parietal lobe dysfunction, and there are many. You've got aphasia, which is difficulty speaking and or comprehending language due to left parietal lobe damage. You've got apraxia, which is difficulty initiating or performing movements due to the damage of the posterior parietal cortex. And you've got agnosia, which is the difficulty or inability to interpret sensory information. And many dysfunctions or deficits can be caused by things such as neurodegenerative diseases, or traumatic brain injuries, or lesions, or other factors. And so at this point you're probably wondering, why is the parietal lobe my favorite? Well, I've been a certified occupational therapy assistant for over 6 years now, and I specialize in working with children with special needs, and many of the children that I've worked with over the years have had deficits in motor planning and apraxia, and they've been diagnosed with other disorders. So in this picture down here, this is a demonstration of constructional apraxia, where kids they have the inability to be able to copy or to form like an object such as a diamond. And in this picture here, the children are playing Twister, but many of the children I work with they have a deficit and they can't even be able to initiate the movement, or after the initiation be able to perform another movement. So that is my favorite part of the brain presentation on the parietal lobe. Thanks.